Welcome to episode 355 of the DFO Rundown. My usual co-host Jason Greger still has his bald ass head in the sand in Hawaii. So that means today I'm joined by the one and only Pete Blackburn from What Chaos. Pete, how you doing?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, looking forward to the ride today. It should be fun. But first, before we get into things, I'm legally obligated to tell you that the DFO Rundown is brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Use promo code NATION, that's NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. They've got everything you want leading up to the Super Bowl between my Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs on February 9th. Pete, for the dog days of the season, we've actually got a lot to chew on.
Sure do.
How are you coming to grips with this Mikko Rantanen trade? Where do you come out on it quickly?
I'm stunned by it, but I can make sense of it from both sides. I obviously like it for Carolina a little bit more, especially if they can keep the player. We've talked about it for years, even when we were going back to our old gig. Like the Carolina Hurricanes need a playoff scorer, and they need a star player, and they got one in Mikko Rantanen. And I think that he brings kind of the edge that they need too. He plays with that intensity that I think that they've lacked for a little bit. So I love it for them.
It's really wild to hear the discourse of the last 24 hours or 48 hours, because it almost feels like now that we've had 4 or 5 days to digest the deal, people are now looking at it from a different perspective saying, man, did Mikko Rantanen take on a lot of risk here going somewhere else, as if he had a choice?
I think that he's in a better spot in Carolina than he would have been in Colorado in terms of like a playoff run. I think Carolina now, I think, shifts to being the power of the East.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So that brings me to exactly what I wanted to get to. I want to sift through today with you the contenders and the playoff pretenders in the East. Let's go team by team. And I want you to give me a verdict of where each team stands. And I'm going to leave out the sort of surefire playoff teams. But I want to start with the team that you watch most closely. And it's the team that
Pretender.
can figure out the least in the Boston Bruins.
They're pretenders, man. Like it's not even close to me. The success that they've had over the past like month or since Christmas, it's been carried by 2 players. Jeremy Swayman turned it around and been like a really, really elite goaltender since Christmas, with the exception of the last start that he had. Him and David Pastrnak, the only 2 guys that are really, really carrying them on a nightly basis. And I don't think that they do anything particularly well outside of that. We've seen it. I don't think that they're necessarily as bad as they were to start the season under Jim Montgomery, but they've been very average under Joe Sacco for the most part as well. So I don't see them being any sort of real contender, even if they get in that wild card spot.
I'm impressed. Every time someone says Joe Sacco, I'm like, you mean Joe Sakic? I can't help myself. Joe Sacco? Sakic? All right, sorry.
We've had a lot of practice with that. So
yeah. But all right, let me play devil's advocate. Okay.
Yeah.
So the 2 things holding them back previously, poor goaltending, and David Pastrnak was just very average to start the year.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a recipe for them to get in?
It could be a recipe for them to get in. I'm not gonna say that they're not gonna get in. And if they get in, it might be a product of the Eastern Conference like wild card just being
flop.
Basically the mushy middle, as one Jeff Merrick would say. Yeah, like I'm not gonna say they're not gonna get in. And maybe if they get a preferable first round matchup against the Toronto Maple Leafs, anything can happen. But they're not a team worth taking seriously in my mind.
What would they need to do at this deadline in order for you to change that opinion?
I think they'd need at least 1 top 6 forward, preferably 2. A center would be great, help bump down the depth a little bit. And Elias Lindholm hasn't been the top line center that they hope that they were getting in free agency, but they're just not generating enough, and they don't have enough play drivers. Like David Pastrnak is their primary play driver, and what they hoped that they were getting from Elias Lindholm, like he's not a play driver. I think he's a good player, but they just don't have enough guys to facilitate offense. They're pretty much one and done a lot in the offensive zone. They don't get a lot of retrievals. They don't get a lot of driving. Their details aren't very good. And obviously with their back end being banged up over the last month and change, like I'm not going to judge what they've been defensively without McAvoy and Lindholm, but their coverage hasn't been good enough either. So they got a lot of problems, and I don't think that it's going to be an easy fix at the deadline. And the bigger question is, do you want Don Sweeney and Cam Neely being the guys to try to address those fixes at the deadline, given what they've done and how this roster has been constructed in the first place.
So is what you're really advocating for some change at the top?
I think that if things really bottom out and this team is exposed, I would certainly consider it.
Now, let me flip it again. And if let's just say they were to go out and get JT Miller, how would you feel about that? Play driver, can play center,
Yeah.
adds intensity.
Makes a lot of sense. He does make a lot of sense, but again, like it's the I don't think JT Miller puts you over the top if you're the Bruins this year. And then the bigger question is, what does JT Miller become for you given the window that you're in if you're the Bruins, and is the cost worth it? And like, who is JT Miller going to be in a few years when you're paying him several $1 million? I think the wear and tear on JT Miller could be a little evident a year or two down the road.
Okay. So then that brings us to the $36 billion question of what do you do with Brad Marchand?
I would have a hard time trading him just based off of what he means to your team. And I don't see them trading him based off of like where they'll probably be. Like, I don't think they're going to punt on this season, especially with the seats warming up a little bit for the front office. Like Don Sweeney and Cam Neely could feel the pressure of the Jacobs, knowing that like their jobs could be a little shaky. And if that's the case, I certainly don't see them trading Brad Marchand on an expiring deal for whatever the return may be, because I don't think it's going to be a big return. I just don't see them punting that way and kind of burning the fan base and giving us tough pill to swallow.
I think the Bruins are in a spot where you don't know what could happen in the East this year.
Yeah, that's why I would kind of just sit still and wait to see what happens.
I'm thinking the East is as wide open as I can remember it. Outside of Carolina, I mean, who really scares you now?
I mean, Florida always is going to scare me just based off of who they turn into once the playoffs begin. But otherwise, I would largely agree with that assessment.
Does Washington scare you?
I think Washington is a very good, legitimate team. They don't necessarily scare me as much as Carolina and Florida would in terms of a playoff run, just based off of that kind of experience and knowing what's ahead for them.
Yeah, I don't know how you could watch New Jersey over the last 6 weeks or the Maple Leafs with what's happened to them in the playoffs and say that anyone particularly scares you.
No, I mean, I think it's Washington. It's Carolina and it's Florida, and then maybe Washington, and then the rest is open season.
Okay, so let's readjust our expectations on this conversation. Not cup contender, but I want to sift out playoff contender or pretender. Okay. So I think we agree that the Lightning are a playoff contender.
Yeah.
Because they haven't missed yet, even though their numbers are trending on a way that is not favorable. Ottawa Senators, in or out?
I think the Ottawa Senators can definitely get in. I think they need a little bit more offense, but I definitely think they can get in, especially if the goaltending is there. And when the goaltending was there, you saw them start to turn it around. I think Ottawa is good enough to make that jump.
Do you have faith that Ullmark can stay upright?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like this is a massive recurring issue for Ullmark. I don't know how serious what he's going through right now is, but if he's fine and like relatively close to 100% by the playoffs, I believe in him.
Do you believe in the rest of the core that the Ottawa Senators have?
In what way, I guess, is the big question here. Like, do I believe in them being able to make a run once the playoffs begin? I'm uncertain about that, but like, we're talking about regular season hockey here to get into the picture.
I think where I'm struggling with the Sens is just the consistency.
Yeah.
Like, they've got it for 2 weeks and then the wheels fall off for 2 weeks. That's what it feels like. There's no middle ground where they're just kind of chugging along at 5-5 or 6-4 that makes everyone feel good.
Yeah, but I mean, also not that this year is last year, but look at last year and how the wild card picture shaped out. There was no consistency from anybody, including Washington, who got in basically because everybody else threw up all over themselves and lost basically every game down the stretch. Like that could be enough. Like winning a couple games could be enough to get you in at the end of this season.
That's why this is actually a compelling conversation, is
Yeah.
because we're about to talk about the 14th, 15th place teams in the conference. And if you wanted to make a full-throated defense or state a case, like I don't know that I could really poke enough holes in it, because it is only going to take 10 really good days this season to get in.
Yeah. And I mean, it's part of why it's a compelling conversation, but also part of why it's like, well, who the hell knows? Because it literally could, and we saw it last year, like it changed every 2 weeks. Like the Flyers were in the 3rd spot in the Metro the entire season.
Until
And then
like mid-March.
yeah, and then lost basically every game of the last 3 weeks of the season and fell out. So like that's kind of where the Eastern Conference is, behind the top 3-4 teams.
Okay. So the Sens are in a playoff spot today. The Bruins and Lightning are as well. The team first out is the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
They have one of the better goal differentials of that group at +1. They've been lights out on home ice. They've got scoring from guys that we definitely did not expect this season. What do you make of the Blue Jackets?
I think they've been really, really impressive, more so than anybody could have expected, especially given everything that happened to them over the offseason. The Sean Monahan loss kind of changes their outlook for me. He's been so important to that team and that identity, and obviously, like the setback that he had really is a huge blow for them. Like that top line with Voronkov and Marchenko and Monahan was one of the most dominant lines in hockey while they were all together. And Fantilli's done a really good job there, but we're talking about like needing the depth to really sustain, and losing Monahan hurts. Like if they go out and get a center replacement and Monahan is able to come back, maybe that changes my mind. I just think they're a much weaker team without Monahan at the top of that lineup.
So would you go out and get that piece?
I think I would, especially given like where you're at for this team and taking a step forward. Like I don't like the idea of letting one key injury kind of derail what has been a really promising and encouraging season for a young group. Like if you can go out, and even if you don't truly believe that like you're ready to make a deep run, I think the experience that you can get for this group as a young core that really hasn't been there, you make that push and you try to just get in, get some experience, and get a head of steam going into next year, because I think the Blue Jackets are in a pretty good spot.
Would that also mean that you're then keeping your pending UFAs?
I mean, I think that if you believe that they're a part of your future, like, yeah, if you can.
Provorov, Matthew Olivier.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't deal Provorov unless somebody really impresses you with the return.
I don't understand, just for fun for a second. Like, do teams trade players when they're not impressed with the return? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, I hate
I
the
think,
whole, we're not trading him just to trade him. Like, who does that?
well, I think the teams do that when you're like, okay, we're not going to be keeping this guy beyond the season, and we have no real reason to keep them. Like teams on the bubble, I don't think should be trading guys if they feel like they have a real opportunity to get in, unless like you really don't believe in your group and you're not just happy with just getting in. Like I think the Blue Jackets should be happy with just getting in and seeing where it takes them. But like if you're the Bruins,
there's a difference between that and then spending assets to make sure that you get in.
Sure.
And that's where I feel like I don't know where to draw the line with the Jackets. Like, if you were to say to me that they were to go out and add and still not get in, I wouldn't be shocked, because they might just get passed by a team like the Rangers, who is
sure. But I think that it's worth taking that swing, in my opinion. I think it's different on a case-to-case basis. Like if you're the Bruins, I wouldn't take a swing just to get in. But if you're the Blue Jackets, like you're a team that is just looking for that berth and that momentum forward, even if it's just heading into next year, I think it's worth spending those assets. Obviously, I probably wouldn't trade like a first-round pick or like heavy assets. But if it's a third round pick or a couple like mid round picks, why not?
I think that, I don't know. I don't want to sound too negative on the Jackets. My concern is I don't know that there is any carryover from this year to next. Like that era of good feelings that you're talking about, this may be just one moment in time for Columbus.
Sure. Yeah, but we're talking about a really young core here, and I do believe in the value of playoff experience and just getting that taste of it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting case. So then that brings us to the wings. In or out?
I am gonna say out. I have issues with their back end and sort of their volatility in terms of what they bring offensively. Like they're not the strongest 5-on-5 team. Their power play has been really, really awesome since the coaching change. And that really gave them some momentum. But I don't think that they are deep enough or strong enough on the back end to really convince me that they're gonna get in.
I couldn't agree more. I don't really understand the makeup of this Red Wing team.
It's
Like
weird.
when you bring in Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko in the summer, that is a signal that you are one piece away from a cup contending team, not a team that is going to be scratching and clawing to get in. And that defense, to me, it just top to bottom. I like where they're heading. I like Mo Seider and Simon Edvinsson, but when Simon Edvinsson comes in and is immediately your second best defenseman, that's just an indictment on everyone else.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we've talked enough about how good Lucas Raymond has been this season. Like Lucas Raymond's on pace for a 92 point season.
And that
And he's
obviously makes you
22.
feel good about him with the contract extension. But you're right, and like the roster construction's a bit weird, where it's like it seems like this weird mix of like we've got our core, and then the rest of it is just guys who are filled in who are probably not long for this team and
It's
not
almost
really
like they're
fitting the profile
placeholders.
of what they need.
It's almost like they're placeholders.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I feel differently about this team, though, and that's the Montreal Canadiens. I feel like they're a team that has some legit pieces that we're just kind of starting to see come together. They might be 1 year early, but I think they're on the right track.
100%. I've loved watching the Canadians. They've been such a fun team. Are they perfect? No, they're a high event team, but I really love like the building blocks of what they have there. Unfortunately, like they had that super hot streak, and then they got hit with some bad luck between Emil Heineman getting hit by a car as being part of one of the best fourth lines in hockey for the last like month and change. It's a crazy development. And then you have Caden Gooley taking that freak accident and that injury that's probably going to keep him out for a really long time. And when you look at kind of their back end, losing Caden Gooley is a big loss. And you know, I really like that team, but I agree with the assessment that they're probably a year away. Although, like, if you're a Canadiens fan, I think you're extremely happy with the way that this season has gone.
Well, so you got this season at least what you came for, right? Which is we need to show some meaningful progress.
Mhm.
Even if the wheels fall off from here, or even if they're a team that doesn't hang in the mix until the end, you can point to those injuries and say, hey, we just got a bit unlucky, but we know there's something here. I think the bigger question I have is how do you handle some of the other ancillary pieces around this team? Mike Matheson is a defenseman with a year left on his deal after this year. Last year finished 9th in the league in scoring among defensemen. Will certainly bring you back a big return if you want to move him. Do you hang on? What do you do with Jake Evans up front? What do you do with some of these other guys on your team that you kind of have to make a decision on?
Yeah, I think they're in an interesting spot, and it's going to be up to smarter people than me to figure out where these pieces fit in. But like you're talking about David Savard, Matheson,
Well,
Jake
Savard's
Evans.
easy. Like
Yeah, that you probably
if
move on.
like Savard's breathing, if someone's giving you a third round pick for him, like you're moving him, third or
Yeah,
better.
I would probably lean moving on from Matheson too, but I think I'd consider hanging on to Jake Evans, just given the window that you're looking at there. But it obviously it depends on what that deal's going to look like too. Like I'm not gonna
Second
hand
round
out.
pick for Jake Evans, is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would probably do that, and then I use that second round pick to go out and get somebody else, not at the deadline maybe, but over the offseason. Throw it in the Sidney Crosby mega deal that they're gonna use to bring in Sid.
Is that ever gonna die?
No,
Like, can we
I will
officially
make
put
sure
an
of it that it's not gonna die.
he's not going anywhere. I don't.
I'll never say never, especially with the
I'm just.
direction that team's headed in.
But he knew, eyes wide open, signing, that this was a real possibility that this team wouldn't be any good.
Yeah, as the theory thrown out by my co-host DJ Bean, that 8.7 number. Obviously, he's had it his entire career, but like 8.7 makes it pretty easy to trade him.
So that's it. You think it's that as
It
opposed
could
to just
be.
pure superstition.
It could be. I mean, Cap's going up. He has every reason to ask for more money.
I don't see it, and I don't see it as long as Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang are there. If those two guys are gone, then maybe I could see it, but definitely not now.
Well, then it's just going to be sad days in Pittsburgh for years to come, I think.
But it's been sad in Pittsburgh.
But it's really sad now.
Like, I'd rather be in Buffalo than Pittsburgh.
I would agree with that. Yeah, 100%.
And that's kind of the amazing part about the season is the Sabres are 7 points back of the Penguins. And look at how we're talking about the Penguins with no shot.
I mean, look at the Penguins' goal differential. They've been really bad for a lot of the season. It's hard too, because like you're talking about the two biggest rivals in the Metropolitan Division since the turn of the century. The Caps and Penguins look like they were going to be in the same spot for a little while heading forward, like just hanging on to those last decrepit legs. And then over the course of one summer, the Caps turn around and are the best team in the Eastern Conference in the standings, and then the Penguins just look horrible. It's crazy.
It's funny because that's how people are going to look at the Caps turnaround and say over the course of one summer. And it's actually like 2 seasons of, hey, we stacked together a bunch of really smart deals. We made the Sandin trade. Well. We gave space for McMichael and Protas to play, so you make a really smart Jacob Chikrin trade. And you kind of continue to stack these things one after the other. The Dylan Strome, he's now in year 3 of his experience there. Like, it wasn't overnight for Washington. There was pain involved. And while the Penguins were closer to competing for a playoff spot, the Caps were busy getting to work.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but from like the outside looking in, you can't see the underground work nearly as well as to when it comes to the surface. And it came all to the surface with like a flurry of moves this summer.
Well, the surface trades for the Penguins were just so bad.
They sure were.
I still can't wrap my brain around the Erik Karlsson deal.
No, I said it at the time. I was just like, I don't know what he does in terms of changing your makeup. Like, they just went out and got a player, a really good player with like a strong legacy that fit the profile of kind of like what they already had, which didn't make sense to me at the time. I didn't think it would go as poorly as it's gone, but it's a sad scene over there. I think like do the Penguins have the worst overall vibe or atmosphere around them in the entire NHL?
I mean, the Canucks this week would say, hold my beer.
But like the Canucks are in a playoff spot.
But doesn't feel like it.
Doesn't feel like it, but you're still dancing at the end of the day if the season ends today.
I guess, but here's the other thing that we're talking about with the Canucks though is, wait, if we trade both Pettersson and Miller, do we have to also trade Quinn Hughes? Like, because we have no chance.
There's no chance I would trade Quinn Hughes. No plausible scenario that I would trade Quinn Hughes.
But how could you rip the backbone? Like, let's just, again, operate under the hypothetical. I can say almost for certain that they're trading JT Miller.
Mm-hmm.
If you're keeping Pettersson, I could see a path forward, right? Because you have your center. But if you're trading both those guys, you got no prayer.
Sure, but you still have a 25-year-old defenseman who is one of the best defensemen of a generation. Like, that's still a
Is he
guy
supposed to
that
do it alone? How's he going to
no,
do it?
you rebuild. Like, and if you're
Rebuild? How long is that going to take?
I
Till
don't know.
he's
He's
31?
25 years old. If it takes 5-6 years, you still got a 30-year-old defenseman. Like,
Why
Quinn
would he want to
Hughes.
be there through that?
So that's the bigger question is like you gotta give him something to make him want to stay, and you gotta be able to like placate him in the meantime. And so like I I get it if he wants to go, but there's no way that I would jump to trade Quinn Hughes even if you are blowing the whole thing up. And that's also to say, like, if you're trading Elias Pettersson, you shouldn't be trading Elias Pettersson unless you're getting some sort of like immediate reset pieces in return.
It's going to be hard to do.
I
So,
agree,
but you
but we just
asked
talked
worst
about
vibes. I mean, to me, it
yeah.
has to be there.
I mean, it's real messy. The messiest vibes. I think the worst vibes are in Pittsburgh.
I think there's some low-key bad vibes in Seattle.
Really?
You don't think so?
I mean, coaching staff wise, like
No, I just
Bilesma,
mean in like, what's the path forward for that team to be competitive?
I do not know. That team, they had a really weird offseason that I wasn't sure it was going to fix anything. And they are the biggest, like, just hanging out in no man's land team in the NHL, maybe. I have no idea what to make of the Kraken.
I just don't see a path forward. They're missing all of the ingredients. They've got a competitive team, but to be competitive to finish somewhere between 16th and 25th.
Right. That's the worst. That's probably the worst place to be. Like you're not good enough to make anything of yourselves, but you're not bad enough to be able to hit that strong reset button and get prime lottery position. Like it's a really weird place to be. And they just handed out 2 massive contracts that, I mean, Montour's looked okay. Stevenson, I think that is going to be a real albatross for them. They're in a really weird spot.
I agree. So back to the East. Rangers, in or out?
I'm going to say out. They obviously caught a little bit of fire recently, found that spark, but like they're unless Igor is dragging them in, I don't see it. I think it's hard for me to say.
What's
just
missing
like
for you? Like I think they've got all the elements. Like okay, not to be a contender, but they've got all the elements to clear themselves from this pack of mush.
Yeah, I would agree with that just based off of like if their talent plays up to the talent, but like you've seen guys just go missing for long stretches and they've looked like Vinny Trocheck this past week with a drop pass through the legs on a breakaway. Crazy. I mean, Mika Zibanejad looked like the worst player in the NHL for like an 8-month span. So like if those guys can play up to their ability, sure, like they got all the pieces. They're a team that like they're just a mess and they shoot themselves in the foot constantly.
I don't know. I'm betting on the Rangers every time. Like if you're telling me I got to pick between Blue Jackets, Red Wings, Canadiens, and Rangers, I'm still picking the Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that, but I mean, you're also like the Bruins have been more consistent than the Rangers this season, which is like kind of crazy to say just because
my brain was exploding thinking about you saying that.
Because they've been like a mediocre team for pretty much the entire season minus like the first month when they were one of the worst teams in the league. The Rangers
were good for the first month of the
right,
season.
but that's what I'm saying. Like the Bruins have been more consistent. The Rangers have been more of a roller coaster. Do I think the Rangers have a much higher peak than the Bruins? Sure, but like you could be talking about the Rangers on a tailspin down the stretch, and it's within the realm of possibility, and they could miss. Like you don't know what you're going to get from them in any like 2-week stretch. I think you know what you're going to get from a team like the Bruins. they're probably going to go like 3-4, and they're going to get at least 6 points.
Man,
it sucks, man.
This Ranger
it's a
team,
wasteland.
I think you're still going to see some moves out of them, not to save this season necessarily, but to begin the surgery ahead of the summer.
Well, I think like a JT Miller trade would do a lot more for the Rangers than it would for the Bruins.
I disagree.
Really?
I think the Bruins need JT Miller more than the Rangers.
Sure, but I think that his arrival is more of a fix in New York than it is in Boston. That's what I mean by that. Like, he does more for the Rangers in terms of putting the puzzle together than it does for the Bruins.
What happens if Miller props open the Bruins window longer?
I mean, again,
like, I'm not saying 5 years, but what if he gives you like 2.5 years from now?
I'm not gonna
sign up for it.
I'm not gonna turn it down. Like, I want the Bruins
you just want the chaos, though.
I do. I want the chaos, and I want to feel good about the future of the Bruins, and I want to feel like there's a direction, and just jamming that door open with like these, Flex Seal things on the boat will not make me feel all that good, because I'm just going to feel the impending doom like a year or two away.
You can't just enjoy it.
No.
Like, you can't like, hey, we're floating even though our boat is kept up by Flex Seal.
Yeah, no.
The fact that you're above water is
the knowledge that we are going to sink at some point is gonna loom over me. And like, the only season that I was really able to enjoy was when they were the best team in the entire history of the league during the regular season, and then the boat capsized in a course of 2 weeks. Like, that was the only time that I was able to enjoy it, even knowing that like the end was near.
I mean, if that season didn't do it for you, you probably should have packed it in.
Yeah, I just should have chosen a different sport.
I mean, everything that could have gone right did.
I know, and it was the best, and then it wasn't.
Oh my God. Why does it feel like I'm a bigger believer in the Bruins than you are?
Because you don't watch them every night. That's my answer.
I guess. I try and watch everyone equally. All right.
Well, I watch the Bruins more than probably most of the people watching here. And if anybody watches them anywhere near as much as I do, they're probably like, yeah, this team stinks, baby.
So we're out on the Penguins. We're not believers in the Sabres, who are somehow 7 points back of the Penguins. That leaves 2 other teams in the East. The Islanders have won 5 in a row, 8-2 in their last 10. Believer or non-believer?
Non-believer. Congrats.
I don't know how anyone could be a believer.
Yeah. Congrats on the hot stretch. It's a long season. Most teams get those. The Islanders have been just miserable.
It's like they could do just enough now to mentally work themselves into believing that they could be something and not selling at the deadline.
I would imagine that most Islanders fans are hoping that this does not continue for very long, to create that sort of derangement for a front office. Like, you gotta sell.
But you know that they're believing it. You know that Lou Lamoriello is like, see, this is the team I thought we could be.
That's insane. You're deranged if you believe in this team. I've
even Patrick Waugh is like, whoa, hold on a second here.
Yeah, Patrick Waugh addressing the crowd at practice, being like, I know we suck. That's just a real flare up in the air that no matter what happens, this team is in a bad spot.
I mean, how many like snide remarks can he make about the roster in one season to tell you that he's not a believer?
Yeah.
And has anyone seen that power play?
The special teams in general, like, horrible. They're still dead last in both power play and penalty kill.
I think so.
Nice. That's a recipe for success for sure.
Okay. All right. So I think they're the only team in the East that should be a clear seller. Like, if you were to say to me, hey, the Sabres not a clear seller, like, we're going to figure out this summer, I'd be like, okay, fine, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
The Flyers, like you're like, we're not going to pack it in. We're not going to trade off. Like, I get it. But the Islanders, they should be selling everything.
I would say the Islanders and the Penguins. The note there is that, like, what do you have if you're the Penguins that other teams really want?
But the Islanders, though, people really want Brock Nelson.
Right.
And like people really would be excited if you were like, hey, we're going to trade Scott Mayfield or we're going to trade someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that.
The Penguins are like, okay, we're going to have a fire sale for Marcus Pettersson. Does that get you excited?
I mean, Pettersson's a good player, and like on a good team, he's a nice piece. But like, if that's the best you got when you're in the state that you're in, it's a tough scene.
On a nice team, he's at 4-5.
Yeah, I do love that the Penguins are like, all right, everybody is up for business except for Crosby, Malkin, maybe Letang. It's just like, so all of your valuable pieces,
right? There's nothing left. Who can we get you excited in? Drew O'Connor?
Yeah.
Do you need a good fourth line player?
Sick fire sale, bro.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk for a little buy or sell.
What's up, boys? New edition of Buy or Sell brought to you by our friends at Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. To kick things off, a little question about the Utah Hockey Club and their potential new name. The options that they're throwing to the fan vote are Mammoth, Wasatch, and just keeping it the Utah Hockey Club. So my question is, buy on one of them and sell on the other. Which one's your favorite? Which one do you want to throw in the garbage? Pete, you're our guest today. I'll let you go first.
Honestly, I'd love to throw all three of them in the garbage. Just a horrible final three for the Utah Hockey Club. I said it on my show, like, I would love if they just went with the Utah Clubbers as their name, and then you use a Yeti with a club, and then you're basically like the Yeti, and you get to pay homage to the original name, and you've got some cool branding options. I think that would be my preferred option, but like, if I have to pick from the final three, I'm probably going Mammoth.
Which one's your least favorite out of them, though?
I think with Squatch, like, I don't even know. I don't know what that is. Like, I know it's the mountain range or some like mythical creature or something. I just don't want to, as like the resident hockey person in my personal life and friend group, I don't want to have to answer what the hell is a Wasquatch every time somebody finds out about that team.
I just like that he's calling it a Wasquatch. He's adding in like
what is
adding
it?
in letters.
What is it?
It's
so
Wasatch.
Like, I don't even know what it is. So like, that's a good reason to throw it off the table.
But that would be like the most hockey thing of all time. Is like everyone in all the other sports are like, what is a Wasatch? And they're like, hey, just trust us. We got this. I mean, it's a mountain range that they're then trying to create a mythical creature from. I mean, Wasatch. It feels like Disney shit.
They're gonna get hammered with the WhatsApp meme every time. It's a tough option. I do love the idea and the chaos of it just coming out of nowhere, though. They're like, here's this long list of team names. Pick from one of these. Oh, whoops, we ran into legal trouble. Here's a mystery contestant. Here you go. Nobody knows what it means.
Well, here's the thing, though. So apparently fans in Utah at the next 4 games can get a view of what the logos would look like in the arena on these like kiosks. Like, so no one else in the public can see it, but you can get a view of the logo and then vote in the arena. So like, they're getting information from their hardcore constituency.
And the Yeti branding that they were going to use for Yeti is apparently carrying over to the Wasatch, I believe.
Which I think makes that a winner, because I was a big proponent for Utah Yeti, and I hate anyone that called it the Yetis, because you cannot have plural Yetis. It's like deer. Deer is already plural. Anyway, moving on.
Are you going Wasatch?
Yeah, I'm going Wasatch. Right. I want the chaos of it, because I want everyone for that exact reason to be like, what the hell is that?
I mean, I can get behind it. It's just like the origin story of it is going to be extremely funny for years to come.
But here's the thing, though. What we're having people vote on in person, they're going to be, as locals, highly perceptible to that, I think, or preferential to something very local that we're just not going to understand. I'm thinking that that's going to have a real chance to win.
You're probably right.
I get your line of thinking for sure. Next one I got for you guys: buy or sell 3 pieces off this Canucks roster by the deadline. So my logic with going with the number 3, I'm like, okay, Besser's gone, Miller's gone, and then either they stun us with Pettersson or they trade Kevin Lankinen as well. But Frank, you buying or selling 3 pieces off the Canucks roster by the deadline?
I'm going to sell. I'm going to go 2. I'm going to say Miller, and I still have to reach to get to Besser. I think there's a way to make a deal there, and I think both these sides are kind of slow playing this. I think Besser wants to be there. I think they want to have Besser. I don't even think he's due like a massive, massive raise off of the 665 that he's making. Probably gets him into the 8s, and then find a way to keep him. But if you really are trading Miller, which we all expect they're going to do, go back to the same conversation we were just having about Quinn Hughes. How's he going to do it on his own? If you're keeping Pettersson, you got to have some other scoring threats. So I think they're going to have to find a way to keep him.
All right, Pete, buy or sell 3 Canucks gone?
I'll buy, just based off of the idea that I think Besser is a likely departure, and Miller is almost a certain departure. And then if you got to just attach a player to either one of those deals to make it happen, that's 3. And I think that's an easy way to arrive at 3. So I'm going to go 3.
Fair. Another team in the Western Conference that has some trade rumors swirling around them, the LA Kings and defenseman Brandt Clarke. Healthy scratch the other day, and it was thrown out on Twitter like, they may be looking to move him with Doughty back. Buy or sell on the Kings trading Brandt Clarke, Pete?
Sell. I would not rush to trade Brandt Clarke, regardless of what he's sort of been exposed to be in them sheltering him and him kind of just being a power play asset. He's a 21-year-old defenseman who was drafted very high and showed promise in his first year. Like, why are you rushing to sell off that person unless you're getting a really big piece in return? And I just don't know what the Kings would be swinging for in a deal that includes Brandt Clarke.
Frank?
I don't even know where this came from.
Kevin Weeks.
I don't even understand the logic, let alone the reality of it. So I'm selling. I don't see it. This Kings team, they need young pieces. They do. Like, they've got a nice blend right now. So to move on from one of them, and in addition, selling low, I haven't found any logic, and I certainly haven't found any authenticity in it yet, other than one guy being a healthy scratch for one period in time.
Fair enough. All right, there you go, boys. That's a wrap on this week's edition of Buy or Sell.
All right, so let's talk quickly through the West, and I'm not going to go team by team, but just want to hit it on a couple bullet points. When you look at the Wild and Kirill Kaprizov, I guess a little bit fortunate timing with this surgery. It's never fortunate to have surgery, but the fact that it's going to occur during the Four Nations break, how aggressive would you be if you're Bill Guerin on the back end of it leading up to the trade deadline?
I think that I would try to reinforce. I mean, that team has had horrible injury luck this year, but like, we've seen that they can be a really good team. And if they're healthy and if they're back intact by the playoffs, like, I think that could be a team that makes some noise. So I would say reinforce, just try to like keep the boat afloat. And then when your guys come back, your big pieces come back, you're stronger. And I think that that's absolutely worth a swing worth making if you're the Wild. I would like to see them maybe like reinforce offensively. Like, a Brock Besser would be fun in Minnesota, and it's the hometown kid, like, gives you maybe a good chance to keep him. Like, I think that would be a swing worth making.
What if the Wild just cornered the market on Brocks? You could go Brock Faber, Brock Nelson, Brock Besser? And why is it that a bunch of kids in Minnesota are named Brock?
It's because it's the state of hockey, baby.
But where did that, do you know anyone else in your life named Brock?
I do not.
I don't
I
either.
don't.
Why do they all play
I
in
think
the
the
NHL? And why are
only
they
other
from
Brock
Minnesota?
that I know outside of the hockey realm is the Pokemon trainer Brock.
I
So
don't even
there
know
you
what
go.
that means. This is coming from a guy wearing
You're
a
not
Minions
cultured.
hat on today's show.
You're not cultured.
Yeah. I am an uncultured swine. Is the Vegas Golden Knights the most likely landing spot for Brandon Saad?
Not according to the Brandon Schmaltz tweet that I saw yesterday saying that he was going to the Oilers, which I didn't fully understand that.
Is that just someone making the Stan Bowman connection? Like,
yes,
hey, I
probably
traded for him twice. I'm going to bring him in again.
Yeah, I think Saad would make sense in Vegas. I don't fully know what
He just feels like a Vegas player to
he
me.
does. He absolutely does. I'm like envisioning what he would look like in that jersey, and it's so easy. And maybe that's just because it's easy to envision any player in a Golden Knights jersey because they've just gone out and poached so many like targets. I don't know. We said yesterday, like, who is the likely Vegas acquisition this year, and I just said Mitch Marner because it's a deal that nobody would see coming, and Vegas has one of those every year. But yeah, Saad would make sense, and I could envision it.
I mean, how big of stones are on Saad to walk away from $5.4 million over the next season and a half because you didn't want to go back to the AHL? You're like, I'm not going.
Good for him.
Would you have done it?
I mean, no, because my bank account looks a lot different than his, but I do respect being like, I'd just rather get a fresh start and latch on somewhere else rather than going to the AHL. I do respect it.
Well, I respect it. I don't know that I would have advised it.
I mean,
I think in the long haul,
both sides are into it, good for them.
He's not. I'd be shocked if he makes all 5.4 of it back.
Oh,
but he's at least going to give himself an opportunity the rest of this year with a fresh start somewhere else to get a deal in the summer.
Yeah,
it could get a big chunk of it back in the summer,
especially like a nice useful playoff run could get a good chunk of it back.
But that's why a team like you have to go somewhere that has a chance to actually go on a playoff run.
Yeah, 100%.
Vegas, I could see making a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Where else? Colorado? Would he go back to Colorado?
Colorado, I think could use him. What about? I mean, we're talking about like the Bruins. I think like the Bruins could be like they're in the market for guys that are just going to help offensively. And
I could see New Jersey making sense.
Yeah, that like I don't think the Bruins make sense
boost.
for him as much as he makes sense for the Bruins. New Jersey, now that you say that, I think makes a ton of sense. Like they've had a lot of guys over the past month or so that have just disappeared in terms of their contributions. If you can get a new guy in the mix to maybe bring something or give a kick in the pants to the guys that are there, I could see that being a really smart move.
I mean, he had 26 goals last year, something like that. So I don't know. I could see him taking one of their other high-priced wingers like a Palat or someone and sliding him further down the lineup.
Yeah. What about like a Washington?
I mean,
I don't know how much he brings.
Yeah, I don't stylistically, I'm not sure that I see a mesh, but I don't know. Crazier things have happened. I think that's the exciting part. If you're Saad, you're going, I'm a free agent and it's January 31st.
Right.
I can go wherever I want.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, Pete, that'll do it for today's DFO Rundown, episode 355. Can't thank you enough for filling in today and yakking it up. Always good to hang with you, and can't wait to watch you and DJ create some chaos on What Chaos.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Always good to reunite.
Yep. The DFO Rundown brought to you by Bet365. Open an account today and bet on a huge range of markets. Use promo code NATION, that's NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.